One of the few organizations I think you can trust, mainly because they're not on the government dole, because they don't take any government handouts. One of the few good guys left out there that's untainted by the Trudeau bucks. Well, those are our friends at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Joining us now via Skype is Franco Terrazzano, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation Federal Director, who joins us now. Franco, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
It was great to see. I see you have an article in the Sun newspapers. This is from the Toronto Sun. The headline is, Trudeau needs to make government debt a priority. Now, you could read that headline in two ways, and Trudeau would say, I'm making government debt a huge priority. I mean, he's the master of it, but I think you mean it the opposite way, don't you?
Yeah, we mean actually reining in all this massive deficit spending. And Ezra, we just got the throne speech from this government. That's when they talk about all these different types of priorities. And unfortunately, sometimes what is not said is what reveals the most. And we didn't hear a single mention of the word deficit or debt. Now, I get that there's many different priorities that governments have right now, but when you are more than $1 trillion in debt, you would think that debt reduction should be a key priority.
Yeah. Well, can you explain to folks, and I got to say, there's certain subjects I feel like I know a fair bit about, but monetary policy and inflation, I'll admit I only have a sort of understanding of the subject. Can you help our folks out and help me out a bit? How does massive government debt feed into inflation, and what is inflation and interest rates? What do they do? Can you sort of bring it down to street level for me?
Well, the one thing that you have to know is just that the more money or the more dollars that the government prints through its central bank, the less that your dollars in your paychecks or your saving account will buy. And what we've seen during the pandemic is this printing press has been on overdrive. The Bank of Canada has printed up $370 billion purchasing financial assets such as Government of Canada debt. Now, that sounds like a huge amount of new dollars because it is. It's a 300% growth in the Bank of Canada's assets, which is way more than what happened during the recessions of the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even the 08-09 recession.
Well, so what does that do? I mean, a lot of Canadians in certain cities, at least, Toronto, Vancouver, to name a couple, housing prices are so high. I mean, the average detached dwelling in Toronto proper is over $1 million now. I think Vancouver in some ways is even more expensive. What's the effect this has on housing prices for people trying to buy their first house? And what's the effect for people who maybe own their home but have to renegotiate their mortgage?
Well, it's driving up the cost of living. I mean, it's too many dollars chasing too few goods. I mean, there's so many factors that can influence prices day to day. But a key one is the fact that the government can print new dollars out of thin air, but it can't print new houses. It can't print up new farmland. And one of the things that we have to remember is that the Bank of Canada, one of the key things that is buying up is Government of Canada debt. The last that I looked, the Bank of Canada's assets, 85% of that is Government of Canada bonds. So to me, it sure seems like the Trudeau government is using the printing press to finance a good chunk of its deficits.
That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.